You're washing the dishes while everyone else is talking in the living room. Seems polite, right? Wrong. Harvard scientists discovered something shocking. This type of behavior triggers an automatic perception of inferiority in others' brains. In milliseconds, without realizing it, they start respecting you less. The study analyzed neural patterns and revealed 6 everyday behaviors, seemingly harmless, that destroy your social authority. The third one is so common you probably did it today. Influential people avoid these mistakes instinctively, while most people sabotage themselves without understanding why. In this video, neuroscience will show you exactly what's eroding your respect, and how to reverse it immediately. You're at a dinner party. Everyone's engaged in conversation, laughing, sharing stories, and there you are, clearing plates, refilling glasses, wiping down counters. You think you're being helpful, considerate, a good host or guest, but something strange happens in the room. The conversation continues without you. When you return, nobody pauses to catch you up. Your opinions, when offered, get a polite nod, but no real engagement. You've become functionally invisible. Scientists at the University of Michigan spent 3 years studying this exact phenomenon. They called it the servant perception bias. Here's what they found. When people consistently observe you performing service tasks, especially during social interactions, their brains automatically categorize you into a lower status position. It happens beneath conscious awareness. fMRI scans showed that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for social hierarchy processing, literally recalibrates your position downward. The research gets more disturbing. Dr. Sarah Chen's team at Stanford discovered that this perception shift occurs in as little as 90 seconds of observation. 90 seconds of you serving while others relax, and your social capital begins draining. The effect compounds with repetition. By the 3rd or 4th instance, people stop asking your opinion on important matters. They interrupt you more frequently. They make decisions without consulting you. But here's the twist nobody talks about. The problem isn't helping. The problem is the context and consistency. When you perform service tasks while sacrificing your presence in meaningful interactions, you're sending a powerful nonverbal message. My contribution to this gathering is physical labor, not intellectual or social value. Anthropologist Dr. Marcus Webb conducted field studies across 47 different cultures. The pattern held everywhere. Societies with vastly different values all showed the same unconscious bias. Individuals who consistently perform visible service work during social gatherings are afforded less decision-making authority. It's primal, it's automatic, and it's brutal. The dishes will still be dirty in an hour. The glasses can be refilled later. But that moment when someone shares a vulnerable story, asks for advice, or debates an interesting idea, that's when social bonds form. That's when respect is earned. And you're in the kitchen, scrubbing a pan that could wait. Harvard's 2018 longitudinal study tracked 300 professionals over 5 years. Those who regularly interrupted important conversations or networking opportunities to perform service tasks earned 23% fewer promotions and were 31% less likely to be included in high-level strategic discussions. Their managers described them as supportive, but rarely as leadership material. Oh, the cruel irony. These individuals often work harder than everyone else. They're more considerate, more responsible. But in the economy of respect, visible servitude during key social moments reads as a lack of confidence in your own value. It suggests you don't believe you belong in the conversation. There's a biological explanation rooted in our evolutionary past. For millennia, social hierarchies were maintained through clear divisions of labor. Those who served did so because they lacked the status to participate in decision-making. Modern society consciously rejects these hierarchies, but our unconscious brain patterns haven't caught up. When we see someone consistently choosing service over participation, ancient neural pathways activate. Now, before you decide never to help anyone again, understand the distinction. Helping strategically, offering to grab drinks for the group before a meeting starts, clearing plates after everyone's done eating and conversation has naturally paused. These actions build goodwill without sacrificing social presence. The difference is timing and exclusivity. Are you helping in a way that includes you in the social dynamic, or excludes you from it? Dr. Rebecca Morrison's research at Yale revealed something fascinating. People who help assertively maintain respect. What does that mean? They announce their help without apologizing. I'm grabbing drinks, who wants what? Versus silently slipping away to do dishes. They set boundaries. I'll handle cleanup after we finish this conversation. They alternate. One gathering they host and serve. The next, they're fully present as a guest. The data shows that successful people understand this instinctively. They contribute without disappearing. They help without subordinating. Watch any CEO at a company retreat. They might make a joke about terrible coffee and brew a fresh pot, but they don't miss the strategic planning session to do it. They don't organize the entire cleanup while others network. Your presence in conversations, especially important ones, is a statement of value. When you consistently choose visible service tasks over participation, you're making a statement too, just not the one you intend. Most of the time, this isn't about confidence or willingness to speak up. It's about where your attention actually is. A distracted, overloaded mind defaults to avoidance instead of presence. And if you want to train your mind to stay clear, focused, and fully present when it matters, take a look at the Brain Song. It's a science-based method designed to pull the brain out of mental overload and restore real focus in just 12 minutes a day. You'll find the link in the first pinned comment. You share an idea in a meeting. Silence. 3 minutes later, someone else says essentially the same thing. Applause. Nods. Great point, Marcus. You sit there wondering if you're losing your mind. Did nobody hear you? Or worse, did they hear you and simply not care? Cognitive scientists at Princeton identified the mechanism behind this maddening phenomenon. They call it authority priming deficit. Before anyone processes the content of what you're saying, their brain makes a split-second calculation. Is this person worth listening to? That calculation happens in approximately 150 milliseconds. Faster than conscious thought. And it's based almost entirely on nonverbal cues you're probably unaware you're sending. Dr. Albert Mehrabian's foundational research showed that only 7% of communication effectiveness comes from words themselves. 38% is vocal tone, and 55% is body language. But here's what most people miss. It's not just about standing up straight or making eye contact. It's about micro-behaviors that signal uncertainty before you even open your mouth. MIT researchers analyzed thousands of hours of workplace meetings using sophisticated audio and movement tracking. They discovered that people whose ideas get ignored share specific patterns. First, vocal fry. That creaky, low-frequency voice quality that happens when you're uncertain or trying to sound casual. It triggers a subconscious dismissal response in listeners. Their brain registers unsure before registering content. Second, excessive hedging language. I might be wrong, but this is just my opinion. Maybe we could consider. Each hedge is a tiny shovel digging away at your credibility. Listeners unconsciously interpret these qualifiers as you pre-rejecting your own ideas. If you don't believe in what you're saying, why should they? The research from Stanford's Communications Lab revealed something startling. They had the same person deliver identical presentations with only one variable changed: the number of hedging phrases. Version A used 7 hedges in a 5-minute pitch. Version B used 0. Audience members rated version B as 37% more credible and significantly more knowledgeable, despite the content being word-for-word identical. But the most insidious credibility killer is something called upspeak, ending declarative sentences with rising intonation, like you're asking a question, even when you're making a statement. It originated in Southern California teen culture but has infiltrated professional communication everywhere. Linguists have found it creates a perception of seeking approval, of being uncertain about your own assertions. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez conducted a brutal experiment. She had executives listen to pitches from entrepreneurs seeking funding. Same business plans, same financials, different vocal patterns. Entrepreneurs who used upspeak received 41% less investment interest. When asked why, investors consistently described them as unsure of their own business model or lacking conviction. Here's where it gets psychological. Many people adopt these credibility-destroying patterns as a defense mechanism. If you preemptively signal uncertainty, rejection hurts less. Well, I said it was just my opinion. If you use upspeak, you're testing the waters before fully committing. It feels safer. But safety in communication is the enemy of respect. The neuroscience backs this up. When listeners detect uncertainty markers, their anterior cingulate cortex, the brain region associated with error detection, activates. They're literally processing your communication as potentially erroneous before evaluating its merit. You're triggering their skepticism circuits while simultaneously trying to persuade them. Yale's School of Management tracked 500 professionals across industries. Those who eliminated hedging language and upspeak from their communication style saw measurable career acceleration within 18 months. More importantly, their ideas were implemented 64% more often. Same people, same intelligence, different delivery. But there's a layer deeper. Psychologist Dr. James Thornton discovered that people often undermine their own words through credibility leakage. Subtle physical behaviors that contradict confident speech. Touching your face while making an important point. Shifting weight from foot to foot during a presentation. Breaking eye contact at the moment you deliver your key message. Each micro-behavior broadcasts doubt. The most damaging pattern? Rushing. Speaking quickly, as if you're afraid someone will interrupt before you finish. It signals that you don't expect people to listen, that you're trying to squeeze your words in before they tune out. Ironically, this expectation becomes self-fulfilling. Rushed speech is exhausting to process. Listeners disengage not because your ideas lack merit, but because your delivery requires too much effort to decode. Neurolinguistic research shows that influential communicators use strategic pauses. They speak at a measured pace. They let important statements breathe. Silence after a key point isn't awkward. It's powerful. It forces listeners to process what you've said. It signals that you expect your words to land with impact. The transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about removing the static between your ideas and others' ability to receive them. Record yourself in your next meeting. Count the hedges. Notice the upspeak. Observe where you rush. The content of your ideas might be brilliant, but if the delivery screams uncertainty, nobody will ever know. There's a moment in every conversation where power shifts. You don't see it happen. There's no announcement, but suddenly, you realize you're on the defensive. You're explaining yourself, justifying. The other person is nodding with that subtle smile, the one that says they've already made up their mind about you, and you have no idea what you did wrong. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania identified this phenomenon as conversational overcompensation. It's the third most common respect killer in human interaction, and almost nobody recognizes they're doing it. The pattern is simple but devastating. You share information nobody asked for, answer questions that weren't posed, and fill silences that should have been left alone. Dr. Melissa Hartfield spent 7 years analyzing thousands of recorded conversations across business, social, and romantic contexts. She found that people who are perceived as lower status share one consistent behavior. They volunteer explanations and justifications preemptively. Before anyone questions them, before doubt is expressed, they're defending against attacks that haven't happened. Here's what it looks like in practice. Someone asks, "How was your weekend?" A high-status response, "Really good, went hiking." A low-status response, "It was good. I mean, I was planning to be productive, but I decided I needed some rest, you know? Everyone needs downtime. So I went hiking, which I know isn't super productive, but it was nice to get outside, and I actually ran into an old friend." One answer respects the question's scope. The other reveals deep insecurity about being judged for resting. The neuroscience is fascinating. When you over-explain, you activate what's called dominance assertion circuits in the listener's brain. They unconsciously recognize that you're trying to control their perception of you, and the effort itself signals that you're worried about that perception. Confidence doesn't explain, it states. Carnegie Mellon conducted a study where participants interacted with two types of conversational partners. Type A answered questions directly and comfortably left silence. Type B elaborated extensively, filled every pause, and volunteered context unprompted. After 15-minute conversations, participants rated Type A as more trustworthy, more competent, and more likely to be successful. Same people in both roles. Only the conversational style changed. But the pattern runs deeper than just over-explaining. It's about conversational real estate, who controls the flow and pace of interaction. Dr. Robert Chen's research at Columbia revealed that people unconsciously track conversational balance. In healthy exchanges, speaking time and questioning time are roughly reciprocal, but people who lack confidence consistently give more than they receive. You ask them one question. They give you 5 minutes of answer plus 3 related anecdotes. They ask you one question. You give a brief response, and they immediately launch into another monologue. The imbalance is glaring to everyone except the person creating it. They're trying so hard to be interesting, to prove their worth, that they dominate the interaction, and paradoxically, become less interesting because of it. The cruelest part? This behavior stems from good intentions. You're trying to connect, to be open, to show you're trustworthy by hiding nothing. But humans are wired to value what's scarce. Mystery creates intrigue. Restraint signals self-assurance. When you lay out your entire thought process, justify every decision, and preemptively address every possible criticism, you're essentially saying, "Please don't judge me. I'm already judging myself." Stanford's social psychology department tracked this in professional settings. Employees who consistently over-explained decisions to managers were 28% less likely to receive promotions. Exit interviews with decision-makers revealed phrases like needs validation, insecure about their judgment, and exhausting to communicate with. These employees often worked harder and delivered better results than their promoted peers. But their communication style screamed self-doubt. There's a particular subcategory that's even more destructive. Apologizing for things that don't require apology. Sorry for the long email. Sorry to bother you. Sorry if this is a dumb question. Each unnecessary apology is a small surrender of status. It frames your existence as an imposition. Apologies should be reserved for actual wrongdoing. When you apologize for normal professional communication or reasonable requests, you're training people to see you as someone who should apologize for existing. Dr. Vanessa Torres ran a 6-month experiment with 2 groups of junior employees. Group A was coached to eliminate unnecessary apologies and over-explanations. Group B received no intervention. By month 6, Group A reported 34% more positive feedback from supervisors and received significantly more challenging assignments, the kind that lead to advancement. The transformation feels counterintuitive. You worry that being more concise will make you seem cold or unhelpful. But the opposite happens. Brevity with warmth is magnetic. I disagree with that approach is more powerful than I might be wrong, and I totally understand where you're coming from. But I was thinking that maybe we could consider a different approach, though I'm definitely open to being convinced otherwise. The silent mistake isn't about what you say. It's about everything you say that didn't need to be said. Every justification offered without accusation. Every explanation when a simple answer sufficed. Every time you fill comfortable silence with nervous chatter. You're not building connection. You're building a case. Against yourself. There's a specific moment when respect dies. And it's not when you admit you don't know something. It's when everyone realizes you're pretending to know something you don't. The room temperature drops. Eye contact shifts. And your credibility, possibly forever, takes a hit it may never fully recover from. Psychologists at Duke University studied what they termed competence signaling failures. Their research revealed a counterintuitive truth. People who occasionally admit knowledge gaps are rated as more competent overall than people who never admit limitations. But here's the trap. Our instincts push us in exactly the wrong direction. Dr. Marcus Feldman's lab used a clever experimental design. They had participants interact with 2 experts, actually trained actors. Expert A confidently answered all questions, even ones outside their stated domain of expertise. Expert B answered most questions confidently, but occasionally said, "That's outside my area. I'd be speculating." Later, when participants discovered that some of Expert A's answers were fabricated, their trust collapsed completely. Expert B's credibility remained intact. The neuroscience explains why. Your brain is constantly running credibility calculations. When someone demonstrates perfect confidence across all domains, a subtle alarm triggers. The anterior insula, your brain's something's off detector, quietly activates. Humans have evolved to be exceptionally good at detecting false signals. We survived as a species partly because we could identify the person in the tribe who talked big but couldn't back it up. MIT researchers analyzed communication patterns in high-stakes environments. Surgical teams, aircraft cockpits, emergency response units. They found a disturbing correlation. Teams with the highest error rates had leaders who never admitted uncertainty. The culture of false confidence cascaded down, preventing crucial information from surfacing. The captain seems sure, so I won't mention what I'm seeing. People died because someone was too proud to say, "I don't know." But here's where it gets psychologically complex. The trap of false confidence doesn't usually start with malicious intent. It starts with an innocent desire to be helpful. Someone asks you a question. You have a partial answer, maybe 60% certainty. Instead of saying, "I'm not completely sure, but here's what I think," you just give the answer. You round up your 60% certainty to 100% delivery. It seems harmless. The problem compounds. That person acts on your answer. Later, they discover it was incomplete or wrong. Now they're in an awkward position. Do they confront you? Most won't. Instead, they'll quietly downgrade their assessment of your reliability. They'll start double-checking everything you say. They'll stop asking your opinion on important matters. And you'll have no idea why your influence is eroding. Dr. Sarah Kim's research at Northwestern tracked this phenomenon in corporate environments. She found that a single instance of confidently stated misinformation could reduce someone's trusted advisor status by up to 40%. But here's the devastating part. The person who gave the bad information usually never learns about the damage. The trust erosion happens silently. People don't announce, "I no longer consider you reliable." They just stop relying on you. The cultural pressure makes this worse. We live in a world that worships certainty. Politicians who admit complexity lose elections to those who offer simple answers. Social media rewards hot takes over nuanced analysis. Job interviews penalize candidates who say, "I'm not sure," even when that's the honest answer. We've created an environment where faking confidence is often rewarded in the short term, which makes the long-term consequences even more brutal. Yale's School of Management discovered something revealing. They analyzed performance reviews across 50 companies. Employees who were perceived as very confident initially received higher ratings, but tracking those same employees over 5 years showed a pattern. Their ratings plateaued or declined as colleagues accumulated experience with the gap between their projected certainty and actual reliability. Meanwhile, employees who were perceived as appropriately confident, certain when they knew, candid when they didn't, showed steady rating improvements over time. There's a particular variant of this trap that's especially destructive: the domain creep. You're an expert in marketing, so people start asking your opinion on sales strategy. You know some things about sales, so you answer confidently. Then they ask about operations. You've read a few articles, so sure, you'll weigh in. Suddenly you're opining on everything from supply chain to HR policy, and each answer dilutes your actual expertise. Dr. Robert Cialdini calls this authority bleed. When you speak authoritatively outside your domain of genuine expertise, you don't extend your authority, you contaminate it. People start wondering, if they're this confident about things they clearly don't understand deeply, how reliable are they in their supposed area of expertise? The neuroscience of trust reveals why this matters so much. Trust is built through consistent calibration. When your expressed confidence matches actual accuracy, the human brain is remarkably good at detecting patterns across multiple interactions. 3 times where your certainty level matched reality builds trust. 1 time where you were confidently wrong can erase it. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of false confidence is how it prevents actual learning. When you pretend to know, you close the door to discovering. You can't ask clarifying questions without exposing your bluff. You can't explore nuance without revealing your uncertainty. You become trapped in your own performance of competence, unable to acquire the genuine competence you're pretending to have. The alternative isn't weakness. It's precision. I know this deeply when you do. I have a strong hypothesis, but I'd want to verify when you don't. That's outside my expertise, but here's who would know when it is. This isn't hedging, it's calibrating. And people who calibrate well are the ones others turn to when decisions actually matter. Everyone loves a nice person, right? That's what we're taught. Be kind, be agreeable, don't make waves. But then you notice something strange. The nice person rarely gets the promotion. The nice person's boundaries get violated repeatedly. The nice person is well liked but not respected. How does that make sense? Harvard Business School's research on likability versus respect revealed an uncomfortable truth. They're not the same thing, and pursuing one often costs you the other. Dr. Amy Cuddy's studies showed that warmth and competence are evaluated on separate neural pathways. You can be warm without being competent. And critically, you can be so warm that people doubt your competence. The mechanism is rooted in evolutionary psychology. For thousands of years, humans survived in groups with clear hierarchies. Those hierarchies weren't maintained through universal niceness. They were maintained through strategic aggression, boundary enforcement, and willingness to create conflict when necessary. The person who was nice to everyone signaled that they weren't competing for status, which meant they weren't a threat, which meant they didn't need to be taken seriously. Modern society consciously rejects those hierarchies. We value collaboration over domination, but our unconscious evaluation systems haven't updated. When you're unfailingly nice, never pushing back, never disagreeing, always accommodating, ancient neural circuitry categorizes you as non-threatening, and non-threatening reads as non-influential. Dr. Thomas Chamorro Premuzic tracked 750 managers across industries. Those rated as extremely agreeable by peers were 32% less likely to reach senior leadership positions than those rated as moderately agreeable. The extremely agreeable managers weren't less skilled or less hardworking, but they were perceived as lacking the edge required for difficult decisions. Would they fire someone who needed to be fired? Would they have the hard conversation? Would they push back on a bad directive from above? The paradox deepens. Research from Stanford shows that overly nice people often harbor intense resentment. They say yes when they mean no. They accommodate when they want to refuse. They smile through discomfort. All that suppressed authenticity has to go somewhere. It emerges as passive aggression, subtle sabotage, or sudden explosive outbursts that seem to come from nowhere, which destroys respect even faster than consistent assertiveness would have. There's a specific behavior pattern that exemplifies this paradox: apologizing for other people's mistakes. Your colleague misses a deadline that impacts your work. Instead of holding them accountable, you tell your manager, "It's okay, I know they're busy, I can work late to cover it." You think you're being understanding. What you're actually doing is signaling that your time has no value and your boundaries are negotiable. UCLA's social psychology department conducted a fascinating study. They had participants work on group projects with Confederates who exhibited different response patterns. When mistakes occurred, Type A responded with kind but firm accountability. "That deadline was important. What happened?" Type B responded with excessive niceness. "Oh, no worries, these things happen, I'll just fix it." After the project, participants were asked who they'd want to work with on a high-stakes project. Type A was chosen 3-1, despite being rated as less nice. The neurochemistry adds another layer. When you consistently prioritize others' comfort over your own boundaries, your cortisol levels remain chronically elevated. Your body is in a state of suppressed stress. Others pick up on this subconsciously through micro-expressions and vocal tension. They sense your discomfort, which makes them uncomfortable, which makes them avoid you. Not because you're not nice enough, but because you're too nice to be authentic. Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability revealed something crucial. People respect authenticity over agreeability. When you share a genuine disagreement respectfully, you're being vulnerable. You're risking rejection to honor your truth. That vulnerability paradoxically increases respect. But when you agree with everything to avoid conflict, you're not being vulnerable. You're hiding. And people sense it. The workplace dynamics are brutal. Columbia Business School found that employees who rarely said no were assigned 43% more work than peers, but received 19% less compensation. They were seen as the go-to for tedious tasks precisely because they wouldn't refuse. Meanwhile, employees who selectively agreed to high-value projects and politely declined low-value ones were perceived as more strategic and promoted faster. There's a gender dimension worth acknowledging. Women face a narrower band of acceptable behavior. Too nice and they're not leadership material. Too assertive and they face backlash that men don't experience for identical behavior. But the research shows that women who successfully navigate this, warmth combined with clear boundaries, often outperform men in leadership effectiveness ratings. The transformation isn't about becoming mean. It's about becoming real. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't take that on right now. I disagree with that approach. Here's why. That doesn't work for me. These aren't hostile statements. They're honest ones. And honesty, delivered with respect, builds more sustainable relationships than performative niceness ever will. Princeton's longitudinal study of social relationships revealed that friendships based on authentic disagreement and boundary setting lasted 60% longer than friendships based on constant agreement. The constant agreement friendships felt hollow. Neither person knew if the other's niceness was real or performative. Doubt eroded connection. The ultimate irony? The people who are too nice often don't even get the likability they're sacrificing their respect for. Research shows that others find excessive agreeability suspicious. What are they hiding? Why won't they ever show me who they really are? Authentic kindness, where you're genuinely nice but also genuinely yourself, is far more magnetic than performed niceness ever could be. You're telling a story. Midway through, you realize you got a detail wrong. Do you correct yourself or push through? You've made a mistake at work. Do you acknowledge it immediately or hope nobody notices? Someone catches you in an inconsistency. Do you own it or deflect? This split-second decision, how you handle being wrong, determines whether people will ever fully trust you again. MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory spent 5 years analyzing trust formation in professional environments. They identified a single behavior that predicted trustworthiness more accurately than any other: how someone responds when caught in an error. Dr. Alex Pentland's team found that people who immediately acknowledged mistakes were rated as 67% more trustworthy than those who deflected, minimized, or denied. But here's what makes this so psychologically difficult. Admitting error feels like status suicide. Every instinct screams at you to defend, to explain, to minimize. Your amygdala activates as if you're under physical threat. Because in our evolutionary past, losing status could mean losing access to resources, mates, and protection. Admission felt dangerous. Modern neuroscience reveals the opposite is true. When you're caught in an error and immediately acknowledge it, something fascinating happens in the observer's brain. Their anterior cingulate cortex, which was preparing to process deception, doesn't activate. Instead, their ventromedial prefrontal cortex lights up. That's the region associated with positive social evaluation. Your admission of error paradoxically increases their confidence in your overall honesty. Stanford conducted a brutal experiment. Participants interacted with 2 advisors who both made factual errors. Advisor A, when corrected, said, "You're absolutely right. I was wrong about that." Advisor B said, "Well, I was going off what I'd heard, and information changes. So technically at one point that might have been accurate." Both were then given opportunities to provide additional advice. Participants trusted Advisor A's subsequent recommendations at 4 times the rate of Advisor B's, despite both having made identical initial errors. The business world is littered with examples of this principle in action. Companies that immediately acknowledge product defects and issue recalls often see brand loyalty increase. Companies that deny, minimize, or slowly admit the same issues see catastrophic trust collapse. Johnson & Johnson's Tylenol recall in 1982 is the textbook case. Immediate acknowledgement, total transparency, swift action. The brand not only survived, but strengthened. But individual credibility destruction happens more subtly. Dr. Jennifer Mueller's research at Carnegie Mellon identified what she calls credibility erosion patterns. It's not usually one big lie that destroys trust. It's a series of small dishonesties, exaggerations that get caught, blame that gets shifted, credit that gets claimed for others' work. Each instance is minor. Together, they create a pattern that's impossible to ignore. The neuropsychology of lying explains why this compounds so destructively. When you lie or deflect, your cognitive load increases dramatically. You have to remember what you said, to whom, and keep your story consistent. That cognitive effort leaks through micro-expressions, vocal patterns, and behavioral inconsistencies. People sense something's off, even if they can't articulate what. Yale researchers tracked professionals over 3-year periods. Those who had established reputations for immediate error acknowledgement recovered from mistakes 85% faster. Their mistakes were treated as isolated incidents. Everyone makes mistakes. But those who had patterns of deflection or denial found their mistakes were interpreted through a lens of suspicion. What else are they hiding? There's a particular subcategory that's especially destructive: taking credit for work you didn't do. Maybe you contributed 20% to a project but implied you were the primary driver. Maybe you repeated someone else's idea without attribution. Maybe you let an assumption of your involvement stand uncorrected. These acts don't just destroy your credibility with the person whose credit you stole, they destroy it with everyone who witnessed it. Dr. Dan Ariely's behavioral economics research showed that people are exceptionally good at detecting credit misattribution. We're socially wired to notice who contributed what. When someone overclaims, observers not only discount that specific claim, they retroactively question all previous claims. If they're willing to exaggerate this, what else have they exaggerated? The transformation happens when you shift from protecting your image to protecting your integrity. Image is about perception. Integrity is about reality. When you prioritize image, every error becomes a threat requiring defensive maneuvers. When you prioritize integrity, errors become opportunities to demonstrate your commitment to truth over ego. Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management studied leadership effectiveness. Leaders who modeled immediate error acknowledgement created teams with 40% higher psychological safety. Team members felt comfortable raising problems early, admitting their own mistakes, and challenging assumptions. Innovation increased because people weren't spending energy on cover-ups. Trust increased because everyone knew the cultural norm was honesty over face-saving. But perhaps the most powerful aspect is this: when you acknowledge errors immediately, you take away others' power to use those errors against you. The person who was preparing to catch you in a mistake suddenly has nothing to catch. Their gotcha moment evaporates. And most people, witnessing that kind of direct honesty, feel a grudging respect even if they disagree with you on other matters. The technique is simple. You're right, I was wrong about that. Full stop. No justifications. No, but here's why I thought. Just clean acknowledgement. It feels vulnerable because it is, and vulnerability, when it's authentic and appropriate, is one of the most powerful trust-building behaviors humans have. The science is clear. Respect isn't lost through major failures. It crumbles through micro-behaviors we repeat daily without awareness. The person washing dishes while everyone talks, the excessive explanations, the false certainty, the infinite agreement, the refusal to admit errors. Each pattern sends signals that our primitive brain still interprets as weakness, but now you know the mechanisms. The question is no longer, why do I lose respect? It's, what will I do differently tomorrow? Because knowledge without action is just entertainment, and you didn't come this far just to be entertained.